I got to warm up with the kids at their Mass an hour ago, but I think what I said to them applies to us too. I think everybody has a little streak of stubbornness, and it comes out at different times. I know I'm stubborn, and when I have a point I want to make with my friends and we're going back and forth, sometimes I say, "You're so stubborn. Oh my God, you're not even open to another opinion." But I'm being just as stubborn, and so when we are stubborn, we usually don't let anything else in. We keep it out. Now, the people here, especially in that first reading from Jeremiah, were so stubborn. And God, speaking through Jeremiah, even says this: "You turn your backs to my face. You turn your backs to my face, not your face." In other words, you walk away from me. And that first reading, oh my God, it's scathing. It's so much. You are sinful people. Your hearts are hardened. You will not listen. And the psalmist picks up that same theme in that refrain that we kept saying. If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. But it's easy to harden the hearts. And I'll tell you why I think that's so. At the end of the Mass, I told the kids, on the outside, this is our flesh, our skin. This is the thing that creates the shell for the rest of us. Go down a layer and you have muscles, you have bones, you have cartilage, and you've got organs. Okay, that's the next layer. This isn't scientific, but the next layer are feelings. And it's amazing how those get attached to every conversation we have, how we react so quickly. We can even react to somebody just making a face at us. We say something and they go, and we get all excited. Oh, how dare you make that look. But deeper, and I would say even deepest, is our spirit. And that's what Jesus is always trying to speak to our spirit. But the flesh and the bones and the organs and the feelings get in the way. And very often they're like a big blockage. And we can be so stubborn rather than opening our spirit. If today you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. Harden not your spirit. And that's what the Scripture speaks to us. And then Jesus comes along and right there, the point is made. He has just driven out of a man who was filled with an ugly, evil spirit, who was spouting off filth. And he calls out the spirit. He pulls out the spirit, and the man becomes peaceful right before everybody's eyes. And what's it say? What was their reaction? They were amazed. Amazed. But then those feelings get in the way, and they start talking. It's by Beelzebul that he does this. And Jesus is so frustrated with them, those stubborn people. He says, if I'm doing this by Beelzebul, who are you doing it by? Who do you do it by? But then he says, but what if the finger of God is upon me? In other words, I'm doing this by God's power. And that's what he's proclaiming. Then he says this is example, if a kingdom is divided against itself, it'll fall. House against house, they'll just fall. But then Jesus says the most scathing thing, and this is frightful what he says to them. Whoever is not with me is against me. Whoever does not gather with me scatters. Now, I believe when we are most stubborn, God is continuing to love us. But Jesus says it's not because I believe that he will turn his back on us, but because he's trying to make the point, you stubborn people, won't you see, won't you hear? Now, we have an advantage because we have this whole gospel. These people are in the story at the time. We're stepped back and we're looking at them in that story. We know that's going to happen, that's going to happen. So we get all this information that we're able to understand more deeply than they were able to understand. But that doesn't mean we're not stubborn. That doesn't mean sometimes we don't turn our back and walk away. And especially, I'd say from that. I mean, I know we all believe in the cross and all, but do we really believe those words? I was mentioning yesterday that I was looking at the bigger set of scriptures that our reading was in yesterday, and in Matthew, there's a big teaching section, but this is the first time I noticed it so clearly, and it's not in the original manuscripts, but in our modern Bibles, each chapter has a title, and within the chapter sometimes there's little titles, and yesterday the reading on the teaching of love followed teaching, and then this teaching on love, and then more teachings. And it's loaded with teachings against taking oaths, against adultery, against hatred. And so when we get to that teaching of love, of all things that Jesus could have said, he could have said, love your neighbor, love your friends, love your family, but he says, love your enemy. Pray for those who persecute you. Bless those who hate you. And that doesn't mean like them. As I always say, it doesn't mean you have to go out to pizza with them. You may not like somebody at all. There's nothing you like about them. They're rude, they're ugly, they're stupid, they're just, ugh. But that means still that we must love them. Because if we hate them, we become worse than them. And our spirit gets tainted. So loving them means pray for them, bless them, ask God to help them, pray for a new spirit in them, want good for them, not evil, not payback, but good. Want it. And if you have the opportunity to give it, give it. If they sneer at you, say, good morning, hope you have a nice day. That doesn't hurt too much to say. Even if they make a face or say something foul to us, that's all right, thank you, but have a good day. And when we love like that, when we love like Jesus, Jesus assures us that we have life, because instead of scattering, we bind ourselves to him and bind ourselves to his word.